Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Giant Take Podcast YouTube channel video. Today, I'm going to talk about some of these falling prospects in these mocks that we're seeing as we inch closer and closer to the NFL draft. Happy draft month, everyone. I'm not sure if I've said that already, but it's exciting. Less than 25 days left till the draft. And let's get into it. We're going to talk about 5 guys today who I think are options for the Giants who are falling down draft boards, whether it be poor pro days, the natural trend of the draft season where certain players just end up falling, sometimes for no reason, sometimes for good reasons. But here I have 5 guys who I want to talk about that I think the Giants should consider, whether it be at 5 or 7, and also maybe during a trade down scenario, trade up from the second round or at that second or third round picks. So all sorts of options here for the Giants, but I want to go through 5 guys. They're mostly upper, first, second, third round guys. So let's get right into them. And probably the biggest of them all here, George KARLAFTIS, edge out of Purdue junior. We've been seeing him slide down draft boards. He was at a lot of times mocked in the top 10, top 5 at times. And now we're seeing him fall maybe to the late 20s, even sometimes to the early second round. So, kind of a little bit weird considering what he can do on the football field. He's got a great first step. He's got great hands. He's great in run defense. All around, he's probably one of the best pro-ready edge rushers in this draft class. I'd say behind Aiden Hutchinson, he's probably the most pro-ready. The cons with him, he's got some length issues. Length is certainly not his strength. Short arms definitely are something that's not great for an edge rusher. And also his agility. What I will say here on his agility, I think his athleticism is a bit underrated. He had a pretty good pro day where he ran, I believe it was a 4.77 40, which is pretty good for an edge guy his size. I'm a fan of George KARLAFTIS. I wouldn't necessarily want the Giants to take him at 5 or 7, but if the Giants were to trade down, maybe right outside the top 10, even 9 or so with the Seahawks, I'd definitely consider George KARLAFTIS. I really like him, and I think he maybe doesn't have the most upside, but I think you're definitely getting a borderline Pro Bowl edge rusher right off the bat, and I think he's certainly a great prospect, and I think he also probably doesn't have the character concerns. Obviously, not been in the room with him and talked to him one-on-one, so I can't really tell you that. But it seems, according to reports, that he doesn't have the character issues that a couple other of these edge rushers may seem to have, i.e. Kayvon Thibodeaux. So that's it there for George KARLAFTIS. I'm going to get to his rankings now where I have his grades because we've done the edge rusher video, so go check that out. But I'm going to repeat some of the grades here where I have him. In terms of how I graded edge rushers, I'll get to the next edge rusher because we have 3 edge rushers and then a couple other guys. Also, how I grade edge rushers: athleticism, pass rush, run defense, and technique. Technique over run and pass. So that's how I grade these edge rushers. So for athleticism, this is all out of 10. I had George KARLAFTIS at a 7. His pass rush a 9, run defense a 7, and his technique an 8.5, which totaled out to a 7.8 rating. And I have him as an early to mid first round player. So really like George KARLAFTIS. Certainly someone who I'd be happy if the Giants ended up with, not at 5 or 7, but in another scenario, which I think is definitely plausible now with all these trades we saw going on. We obviously saw the Saints trade with the Eagles. So maybe they're looking to jump up. So who knows? But George KARLAFTIS is definitely a really interesting player. Next, this is kind of one that a lot of people have been talking about. Josh and I have talked about it on the podcast. This guy obviously had a really unfortunate circumstance. This isn't really about his play whatsoever, or even his testing. Michigan's David OJABO, edge, junior, 6'5", 250 pounds. Obviously, he tore his Achilles at his pro day. He was having a great pro day up to that point. But Achilles injuries, those are serious injuries. Obviously, it's gotten easier to recover from those types of injuries. We saw with Cam Akers, he came back and he got that injury in the preseason, and he was able to come back by the playoffs. So certainly something you're able to recover from, but something that maybe causes some concerns down the line for a lot of teams. His pros, it's just athleticism, athleticism, athleticism. He is an athletic freak. He's the most athletic edge rusher in this class. Maybe one of the most athletic players in this class. He's explosive. He's got great bend, and he will beat you with the speed rush time and time again. He's not a polished pass rusher. He doesn't have all the moves. He doesn't really have a power rush. His strength is maybe something that is a little bit concerning, and his run defense is in general really poor. So that's something you're going to have to develop him with. In terms of OJABO, you're looking at a very much developmental guy, but I think if you see him in the second round, the Giants are there at 36 and he's there, I would press the button. It's not on the button anymore. I'd hand in the card as quickly as possible. That's what I would say for David OJABO. I want to get into his rankings here, ratings that I have for him. So David OJABO, I have him at a 9.5 for athleticism, 8 for pass rush, 5 for run defense, and 6 for technique, totaling out to a 7.6 out of 10. And I have him as an early to mid first rounder as well. Probably more of a mid first rounder after his injury. Very much similar. I think he has some traits that are similar to Chandler Jones, obviously nowhere near as polished, but something that maybe you see if you can really develop him as an edge, you could see where his ceiling is in the future. All right, Drake Jackson out of USC, 6'3", 254, junior. Drake Jackson is someone who maybe 6 months ago was a mid to late first round projected player. Now he's a second, third, fourth. I've even seen him in a 5th round in certain mock drafts. And I don't really understand it. He has great length. He's got a good first step. He's agile, and he's got great lateral agility as well, right? There's general agility and lateral agility. Both are important at the edge position. His cons really is that his strength is maybe not NFL level yet, but I think that's something you could develop. He is maybe a little bit undersized, and his balance is certainly an issue. While he's agile, his balance, he does sometimes just not seem to be able to stay on his feet when he's bending around the edge. So something that maybe is a big turnoff for some teams, because that's not something you can really improve easily, right? That's not like a easily solvable thing, kind of like your athleticism, right? You can't just be a sudden athletic freak out of nowhere. So that's something that is concerning with him. Drake Jackson, I think he's a good edge rusher prospect. For my grades, I have a 7.5 for athleticism, 7.5 for pass rush, 5.5 for run defense, and 6 for technique, totaling out to a 6.8 out of 10. And I have an early second round grade on him. So I would be good with taking him at 36 and ecstatic taking him at any of those spots in the 3rd round. Like Drake Jackson, I'm probably a bit higher than the average fan on him, I would say. I think most people have him more of as a late second, early third type round type guy, but I certainly like him in the early second round. All right, now we have a couple of interior offensive linemen. These are guys that I know have been mentioned with the Giants early in the draft process, but here's one that's really popular that I've seen in the 2nd round, many mocks now, in many different mocks. Tyler Linderbaum out of Iowa, 6'2", 296 junior. And he's an athletic freak in terms of his speed and athleticism. His size is certainly concerning. He's small, and maybe his strength is something that's concerning for a lot of NFL teams that might just write him off or just take him off their draft boards altogether. He's solid in pass protection. He's got good patience, but he really excels in run blocking, where he can get out, get to the 2nd, 3rd. And with him, he gets to the 4th level, if that makes any sense. For my grades on Tyler Linderbaum, I look at interior linemen like this. I have athleticism, pass blocking, run blocking, and technique. Very similar to the edge rushers, just in terms kind of flipped for blocking, obviously, since they're O linemen. Athleticism, I have an 8.5 for Tyler Linderbaum, 7 for pass blocking, 8.5 for run blocking, and 6.5 for technique, totaling him as 7.8 out of 10, a mid-first round prospect. Like Tyler Linderbaum a lot, there's obviously the positional value concerns, and I think that's why he's dropping. But certainly if he's there in the 2nd round for the Giants, another guy I'd hand in the card right away for. and certainly one of probably the only guy in this class besides maybe Kyle Hamilton who is a generational talent at their position. I think that word's overused. You should really only have one or two of those guys at most per draft class. Last year was Kyle Pitts and no one else really. The year before that, now I'm thinking about it, I guess possibly Joe Burrow, it seems like could be if he, continues at the trajectory he's currently at, but you don't usually see that word a lot. I know a lot of people overuse it, don't get me wrong, but certainly Tyler Linderbaum, a great player, and really excited to see what he does at the NFL level. And finally, for our fifth player here, I've got Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M, 6'4", 323. Kind of had a poor combine in a sense. He didn't really show that he was some sort of athletic freak like a Tyler Linderbaum. He didn't really show that he had the athleticism to play tackle. And I think that's what a lot of people are kind of hoping that he could show, that he could be a literal five position. He could play any of the 5 spots on the offensive line, when in reality, he's more of a guard. So that's something you do have to take into consideration. He doesn't have the speed to be center, and I think he's more of a guard, and he's a good fit at guard. But we saw in the beginning of the draft process, even somewhere similar to Drake Jackson like 6 months ago, that he was more in the early to mid first round range. Now he's fallen back to late first, early second. He's a great run blocker. He's physical. He's explosive off the line of scrimmage. I think that's something that are all important. And the explosive off the line of scrimmage, while he didn't really test well at the combine, if you watch him on tape, he's much quicker and explosive, more explosive on tape than he tested at the combine. There's always a few players who always do look better on film than they actually, test at the combine. Kyle Hamilton, for example, Traylon Burks, another great example. He ran a 4.65 40. Looks like he runs in the 4.4s in his tape. So definitely not really concerned by his combine performance, because we saw, he has so many solid hours and hours of tape that I don't think NFL teams are going to care. I think he's going to be one of those guys who's going to go much earlier than people expect, but I'm going off the mocks here. Cons for him, he has some balance issues at times, not always, but there are some balance issues, and his pass pro technique at times needs to be sharpened. So certainly something you're going to look to develop with Kenyon Green. For athleticism, I have a 7. Pass blocking, I have a 7. Run blocking, I have a 9.5. And technique, I have a 7, adding up to a 7.6. Also a mid first round prospect. Again, I feel like I'm a broken record, but if he's there in the second round, if we can trade up for him in the late first, I think he's another great fit for the Giants. All these guys, I think, are going to be really good fits for the Giants in terms of what they want to do, whether it be on the offensive line or at the edge rusher position. So really like these guys a lot. And with that, that's the end of the video here. These are some of the falling prospects. Maybe, if there are more guys who are really falling, because there's always going to be guys who are falling closer to the draft as well. We've seen Kayvon Thibodeau. I didn't really want to put him here because I was looking for more guys who are really like free falling, not guys who are moving from number 2 or number 3 to number 7. So these guys moved back probably 10 plus spots in most of these guys' cases. So that's kind of how I chose them. But all these players, there's obviously players at different positions, right? Wide receivers, etc. But I'm talking Giants specific here. And these are players that the Giants could possibly be interested in who have fallen down draft boards. Thank you, everyone, for watching, today's video. And we'll see you next time with some more Giant Take podcast content. Less than a month till the draft. I'm excited. Get excited. More content on the way. Peace.